Welcome back, one and all. Leave a like if the algorithm brought you here. But surely subscribe if you are led by one of my most endearing poisonous reptiles or amphibians. I am Sir Grimtales, and once more we continue the trudge through the creepy tales of Reddit. Let us begin. No One Believes. I remember when I was around the age of 4. My family and I lived in a small apartment on the 4th floor, which was pretty high. The apartment was full of people like drug addicts and other low-life criminals. There were no other kids in the unit, so I mainly spent my time playing with toys. One night, after my mother turned off the lights for bedtime and the whole family had gone to sleep, I woke up in the middle of the night, around 2 a.m. I was pretty thirsty, so I was going to grab a cup of water from the kitchen. But as I was pulling off my blanket, I heard noises. Noises coming from the other side of the apartment. Being a stupid toddler, I didn't think anything of it. So I got up and walked out of my room. The moon was lighting up the room through the open sliding door to the veranda. But suddenly, I came to the terrifying realization that the sliding door was supposed to be closed. I knew this because I was the one who closed it before bed. At that moment, I heard those noises again, and they were coming from the kitchen. I put 2 and 2 together and realized that someone was in the home. I tried tiptoeing to my parents' room, but I looked behind me, and what I saw filled me with fear. It was a man in a costume. He looked at me and grabbed at me. He was pulling my hair and putting his hand on my mouth, but I managed to slip out of his grip and ran to my mother's room. I was too scared to say anything. The next morning, I told my mother everything, but she told me it was all just a wild nightmare. I tried to tell my dad, but he said the same. Only I know what happened, but no one believes me. I will never forget the sack the strange man wore on his head, and something that still bothers me is wondering how he managed to get to the 4th floor. The door had been locked, and so were the windows. Had he climbed the entire building? And if so, why me? A Wendigo broke into my house. About 3 years ago, I was in Virginia, visiting family over the summer. We were right outside the D.C. area, and staying in a 2-story house near the freeway. On the other side of the freeway was a forest. So, my mom, her boyfriend Eric, and myself were all staying with Eric's parents. We had brought some night vision binoculars and were itching for a chance to use them. After dinner one night, we geared up and went out. We passed under the freeway and headed into the woods. When we got about 5 minutes into the forest, we set down our bag and took out our binoculars. My mom looks around with them for a while, seeing a few squirrels here and there. She eventually gets bored and passes them to me. I look around for a while, being careful not to look at the freeway for fear of being blinded. I spot something behind a tree about 50 feet to our left. I concentrated on it, trying to figure out what it was. It looked like a pale, bald, anorexic man looking straight at us from behind a tree. I got a bit uneasy, but was hesitant to believe what I was seeing. I asked Eric to take a look, just in case. To my despair, he sees it as well. He describes it much the same way as I did. Now, Eric is a former amateur boxer, and I train MMA almost every day. But neither of us wants to stick around with that thing watching us. We start heading back to the house, crossing under the freeway. We decide to chance a look behind us. all three of us see glowing eyes lit up by the headlights on the other side of the freeway. That made us hurry. When we got back, Eric's parents are asleep, and my mom and Eric go upstairs to the guest room. There's only one guest room, so I have the couch downstairs. I'm a little too excited after seeing the thing in the woods, so I don't sleep a wink all night. Around 3 a.m., I was watching TV when I began to hear footsteps above me. A picture of the creature we had seen earlier immediately flashed into my mind, and I began to panic a little. I tried to calm myself down and tell myself it's just one of the dogs, or maybe my mother or Eric was having trouble sleeping. I continued to hear the footsteps for a while, and then I hear a doorknob jiggle. I find it weird that they're trying to open a locked door, but again I try to calm myself and ignore it. After a moment, they stop with the door, walk around for a few more minutes, and then it's quiet again. My eyes remained wide open until the sun began coming up, after which I passed out. My mother wakes me up, and the first thing on my mind are the footsteps from the night before. I describe what happened and ask if one of them had gotten up at any time. When she says no, I begin to think it must have been one of the dogs, until she tells me the room above me is the office. No one was in the office, and the door stays locked at night. My heart sinks as I piece it all together. I can't say if it was that thing from earlier for sure, but I think it was. I've done a lot of researching since then, trying to figure out what that thing was that night. I found 2 creatures that seemed to match it. I think it was either a skinwalker or a Wendigo. Whichever one it was, I'm just thankful that the door was locked.